Hello everyone, and a warm welcome back to our Marine Money Cyprus 2020 virtual forum. This is our third and final session of the day. We would like again to thank the Shipping Deputy Ministry, the Cyprus Shipping Chamber and the Cyprus Union of Ship Owners who are supporting us today. We'd like to kindly thank all of our sponsors who've given great support and whose logos you'll see on the screen during the day. And of course, a big thank you to all of our speakers who've taken the time and effort to prepare. Just before we begin, a couple of ground rules. All guests will be on mute in order to maintain quality control. During the session, you can send in questions in the box shown now on your screen. I will receive those questions and ask some of them on your behalf at the end of the session. To collapse the window enabling a full screen, just use the arrow at the top. Our session now is entitled Market Direction and Sector Predictions. Our moderator is Mr. Andrew Hampson, who is the CEO of Tufton Investment Management Limited. Andrew, please.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. And may I start by saying many thanks to Kevin and the team at Marine Money for putting together this virtual conference in what is really quite challenging conditions. And I think as we go through these difficult times, the ongoing communication and interaction, I think, are a key facet, not only for our various businesses, but also for our own well-being. So I think many thanks to you, Kevin, for bringing us all together in this environment today. I have a very distinguished and experienced panel here before me, representing different areas of the industry, and I hope therefore we can have a good debate on today's topic for this afternoon, which is market direction and sector predictions. So joining me today in the finance and investment corner, I have Freddie Lee, who is founding partner of D4 Capital. Freddie has spent much of his working career in private equity. I think maybe most notably, correct me if I'm wrong, Freddie, with the Barclays Natural Resources investments team, where he was one of the co-founders of Hafnia Tankers and has stayed on through to last year as an advisor to Hafnia and their merger with BW Tankers. Freddie comes very highly qualified with a Oxford degree in PPE, which is the usual course of route for politicians in the UK. So Freddie was clearly bright enough to actually avoid that industry and make the correct decision of coming into the maritime industry. In the ownership management corner, we have two very experienced professionals. Firstly, I'm going in order across my screen here at least. We have Erwin Derlagen, who is Chief Operating Officer of Enesel Limited, which is the ship management arm of the Lemos family business. And he has a very keen interest in post-Panamax container ships, as well as other aspects of shipping. Erwin has spent many years at sea before becoming land-based, and is a very active member of the various maritime forums and organizations within the Cypriot maritime cluster. Last but by no means least, Prabhat, Managing Director and CEO of MSC Ship Management. I think MSC will be well known to most of you, but maybe you don't actually realize that MSC have the largest in-house ship management company in the world, managing exclusively MSC's vessels, and that's over 250 today. Prabhat also has spent his time at sea before coming land-based, and is also a very active member of the principal shipping forums and business community within Cyprus. So just onto our discussions. Kevin's intro for the day says that with COVID-19 causing a slowdown in economic growth, the propulsion debate deterring new investment, and ESG and environmental pressures on shipping companies from investors, charterers and financiers, where do owners and operators see new opportunity in 2020 and onwards? So I think let's kick off straight with the COVID issue. And I think before moving on to the more macro demand and outlook aspects of the pandemic, I think it's important that we should first address the crewing impact of COVID and the issues of crew welfare and crew rotations, and if this has longer term issues on the industry. And I think maybe best that we start this from the ship management side. So maybe if I can put that question to Erwin first, and then Prabhat, and then Freddie, as to your views on the issues that COVID is creating within crewing and crew welfare and longer term aspects of the business. Erwin.
Yeah, thank you very much, Andrew. We as a ship owner, what we're seeing is that one of the things on board is the mental health of our crews, which is, we believe, seriously affected. There are a lot of crew members who are spending months over their contractual term that they have to be on board. And for us, the biggest concern that we have today is not so much what we're facing today. It's the disrespect which is being shown by the politicians, by the governments, by the different authorities towards our seafarers, where we are hearing the comments from young seafarers who are saying, you know, to study for 4 years and to go on board of a ship, which is an amazing profession, but then to be treated like an outcast for the rest of the world is not something that I want to do for the rest of my life. So I'm not considering to continue my career. And in our business, one of the biggest issues that we're facing for the last decades is to get professional and qualified crews on board. Now, if of those smart people, many of them will leave because they are convinced or they feel that they're being treated as outcasts by all the different authorities and different governments. That's for us a major concern. I mean, what we're facing today is just, it's a problem, but we can deal with it. And it's not easy, but eventually we get people on and off the ships. We're more concerned about the future.
Right. Prabhat, I think I'm fairly sure we all share that view. But I mean, what are you doing in particular at MSC to combat these problems?
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Erwin, for the comments. I think we need to look at everything. I'm an optimist person, so I look at every crisis as an opportunity. And also, if you need to deal with a crisis, you need to do preparation a lot beforehand. And because we are in the business of the ship management, and the crew is the core. And I always repeat that our performance is not what office is performing. Our performance, how the crew is performing on board. So our sole direction is always for the crew. Crew. And if we can do something better for the crew, this is what we do. And that is why having this trust, respect, and the positive work environment that has been created over the years has helped us really overcome the crisis. Because, I mean, we're very lucky and in fact very proud of our crew that we did not have any situation that we could not handle. We did a lot of complex crew change, but also being the size and also being in the container industry, we were in a position to divert the ships to many crew change friendly ports, which I understand it was not possible for the tankers or the bulk carriers. So we did utilize all our strength, whether it was the worldwide trade network or our agencies network, or how the industry has behaved in this time that whole industry came together. I think it was probably the first time there has been so much focus on the crewing worldwide. Before, the crew was a silent partner, and today we are discussing to give the key worker status. So I look at a positive side that maybe with all this lobbying, and we can say that a lot of things was not enough, but this is a lesson to be learned, and I believe that we all are going to value the crew. Crew is not going to want that a number or ID that you can put on board the ships. And this is how the companies have interacted with the crew over the years is going to pay them off. So I'm absolutely, very confident and comfortable. Yes, there is a crisis, and it is a family that we are working with the crew. So if there is a problem, we are helping them. And of course, there have been instances where you cannot control the costs. And these are the time that you cannot focus on the cost. You have to go all out to make sure that the human aspect is and the family aspect is taken care of. And they are before cost in our company as our philosophy.
Okay, thank you, Prabhat. Freddie, just to finish off there, I mean, from my perspective, talking to a lot of different investors, this crew issue, is clearly something which has got to national press level outside of our industry. It's something we get a lot of questions on now, which I think is good news and supports what the other panelists have said. Is this something you're seeing as well from the private equity side, that we are starting a bit of a movement here, that people are concerned about this in a constructive way?
Absolutely. I'd echo the previous thought from Erwin and Prabhat that the crew is absolutely critical. You have to look after your crew. We're lucky. We consider ourselves very lucky to be working closely with Synergy Marine, who are extremely professional, and they are actually looking after all of our ships in our portfolio from a technical perspective. And yes, we, as everyone else has, but we have had individual instances and issues that we have to deal with. And as Prabhat said, it's you must look after your crew, and in order to deal with these crises, it's not about cost, it's about getting the right answer for them. I would say that it's just from an investor side, it's not just about from a cost perspective, it's not just about crew changes, takeovers, SAR inspections. Where can you get inspected? What can you get inspectors on board? And when you take over vessels, then getting a full crew in place with the various stages and groups of crew that you'd have to do with COVID tests, etc. And where you can do it. I mean, we took over a vessel in Japan on Monday, and as I said, we're lucky to be working with Synergy, who did a great job in getting the crew over there in 3 different batches in advance of the takeover. But it's become a lot more complicated. So essentially, you just have to, from an investor perspective, put more allocation of cost to that aspect of it.
Okay, I'm unmuted now. Sorry, somebody had muted me. Somebody clearly didn't like what I was saying. Anyway, moving on from this important issue of the crew welfare, etc., just let's have a brief discussion about maybe the wider implications of the pandemic. And it's clearly impacted us all from a personal point of view, as well as from a business point of view. But from a world trade point of view and an outlook for our industry, I think over the first 10 months of this year, across the 3 key segments of container shipping, dry bulk and wet bulk, I mean, we've seen quite different fortunes. We've seen the container side, I think, having a bit of a double dip in Q1, Q2 as first Asia shut down, and then Asia woke up and just to realize that the West was shutting down, but have since seen very strong volumes and I think surprisingly strong results from the container sector over the last 6 months. Tankers clearly benefited phenomenally from the contango in the early period, but I think are now facing the harsh realities of lower demand levels. And bulkers have had a pretty torrid time, although there may be 1 or 2 glimmers of hope at the moment. So just a question to each panelist as to where do you see the relative demand performance of each of the sectors on the basis that we find some solution during 2021 to the COVID issues? And maybe we just reverse the order there and start with Freddie, if you don't mind, from the investment perspective, as to what's your view on the sort of three key sectors? Where would you be active today, or what do you think COVID has changed in regards to those sectors from a demand point of view?
Thank you, Andrew. We currently are pretty focused on the product tanker segment, specifically MRs, and all of our portfolio is currently in MRs. So from a tanker perspective, we are entering a winter market. So theoretically, rates could get better. They have been on a spot market basis. They have been fairly depressed over the last couple of months, particularly. I think from an investment perspective, you have to look at it as a portfolio and a mix of charters and spot exposure within the portfolio, and look at each individual opportunity and see whether the investment stacks up. We think that the investments we've made in tankers stack up. We can see some softening in asset values, continuing softening in asset values, but there is at some point there is a floor on that. So again, if you're trying to pick the bottom and put all your chips in at that stage, then you're unlikely to do that. You've got to build the portfolio over a period of time and hopefully be comfortable about what rates you're getting across a mixture of charters and spot. We're more on the charter side than we are on spot exposure. Our mandate is actually across sectors, so anything maritime. So we are able to commit within the container sector or the dry bulk sector. I think containers have performed well over the last few months. We've seen several deals in that segment, but we haven't made a commitment there at this point. I think we're more, our expertise is more in the tankers and potentially in dry than it is in containers. So it becomes slightly more difficult to make a new commitment within containers. Dry asset values are coming down. Asset values are, both on the new build front and the latest transactions that have been done with Scorpio Bulkers selling to Navigar. They're getting to pretty attractive pricing, and ultimately the return from an investment is a combination of what price you pay and the income you get. So the spot markets could remain relatively low, but if asset values come down far enough, then you've got that to contend with. So the income that you get is on a lower base.
Okay, thanks for that. I think you and I are reasonably well aligned. I suppose one could phrase it as saying being somewhat opportunistic at being able to sort of come in and go out of this as we actually please. But maybe a question then to the other two gentlemen who are very firmly fixed within the industry, particularly on the container side. Could we just sort of take your views as to what you reckon the longer term implications of COVID might be on the industry, and whether or not you see any real areas of opportunity as a consequence of it, or if you just see downside? Prabhat, maybe first.
No, thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Freddie, for the comments and more insight about the dry and the tanker sector. It is true that the container industry has faced a a number of challenges, and in the beginning, it was a significant drop in the demand, huge volatility, and this created quite a big impact on the whole supply chain. Of course, the need of the hour was to adapt quickly and being flexible enough to respond to the situation. And a lot of ships were stopped, a lot of sailings were made void, and I would say the industry was quite disciplined in responding to these demand trends actually. And I feel that especially the container industry has played a very important and a responsible role in this pandemic, because the movement of the goods, you take the foods, medicine, perishable goods, everything, I mean, was happening through the container vessels. And also thanks to the authorities that even though lockdown was there, the ports could operate. And of course, no need to mention about, again, the role of the crew in this possible movement. And for us as a ship manager working ashore, we had a very strong pressure to make sure that you not only run the ships, get the cargo moving, but keep the crew motivated so that you have a minimum incident or accidents that can disrupt the whole chain actually. And then we have definitely seen that there has been quite a uptake in the demand, and a lot of the ships which were stopped or in the short-term laid up have been put back into service. And again, this is how we have responded to the changing market scenario. And we always think that the world is going to live better, and there are always the better days ahead. And I believe that as long as people will live better, the shipping will continue to move the cargo, and container sector being one of the prominent today to move the cargo today will definitely have better days ahead.
But you clearly also need the raw materials to move from A to B in order for the finished goods to be able to move from B to A or B to C, whichever way it is. So I mean, you are to some extent also dependent upon the whole of world trade working in the right way.
Yes, absolutely, Andrew. I mean, it is of course, it is a symbiosis actually. So I believe that when we say that the world is going to live better, that means it is opportunity for all the three sectors actually, not only one sector. And because container is moving majority of the non-bulk cargo, so the container uptake we can see faster than any other ones actually.
Yeah, maybe so. Erwin, your views on impacts of COVID and on your sectors or other sectors, if you wish?
Well, I mean, being responsible for the operation of the fleet, let me not talk about the future of the different segments and the earning capacities, because I'm only spending money. Yeah, as an operator, I'm only spending money. So within the Lemmers Group, we have also, I mean, our tankers, which are being managed by our colleagues from Enesel in Athens. I would say that from a expenditure, we haven't seen much of a deviation in our expected actual OPEX compared with the previous years. We were all afraid that crew expenses would go up because of the the difficulties in doing crew change. We have to test people, we have to put people in quarantine, we have charter flights and so on and so forth, but it's not excessive. It's within let's say an acceptable limit for the container ships, and that's because container ships are doing many ports, so you have a lot of opportunities to do your crew changes. Yeah. Now my colleagues from the tanker fleet, they went through significant expenses to get people on board of the ship, so the OPEX increased significantly. Yeah, because of doing crew changes and doing a crew change whereby they had to deviate a ship for 4 to 10 days. Yeah, I mean, to be able to do a crew change. So on the cost side, I think that bulkers and tankers, they will have, if this continues, they will surely see an increase in their cost. In our case, with our ultra large container vessels, we didn't see that really. It's not something that is of concern. I don't know if Prabhat has the same view on it, but OPEX wise, we are very much the same.
Okay, but from maybe a more sort of macro view of it, I mean, do you see there's been a lot written and talked about the COVID crisis changing our production habits, changing our consumption habits, you know, the end of globalization, more nearshoring, you know, what's your view on those more macro issues coming about, particularly on the container industry?
Okay, I mean, income-wise, you know, our vessels are with a major liner on the time charter, so income-wise, you know, I mean, we're not really affected. We are monitoring on a weekly basis how our fleet is performing, and again, especially the volumes, the total deadweight carried on our container vessels in 2019 and 18 compared with 2020. 2020 is the highest year of the last 4 years. And also the actual amount of the actual covered miles, so ton miles, is also higher in 2020 than it was in 19, 18, and 17. So we have been carrying more cargo over a longer distance. Yeah. Right. So and this is in a year that everybody is very concerned about COVID. Now, I know that the large container vessels were less affected than, for example, smaller container vessels. But in our case, we have been carrying more cargo over more distance. Yeah.
Okay, you seeing the same, Prabhat?
Yes, we have seen in all the sizes, all the segments of the container industry, there has been, you know, definitely we are moving more containers. And also, you know, there is a lot of always imbalance in the container industry. So, I mean, you're also moving a lot of empty containers, and the repositioning cost is also quite significant in the industry. So it is not that every voyage is making the same money actually, but indeed the production places have seen a bit wider spread compared to what was only the China. And I believe that this trend might continue in the future, given the political imbalance that we have in the world today, and a lot is going to depend on what is going to happen in the US in coming weeks, actually.
Okay. I think, Freddie, I'll come back to you on a slightly different question to give you a fair share of airtime as well. But I wanted to move on because I think it's quite important that in this session that we also handle a quite vital discussion on the really a mixture of the regulatory side, technological side, and the ESG side, which of course is all coming together in fuel and fuel consumption issue and engine design and new buildings. And we all know that fuel is the largest cost element, and therefore there is financial incentive to reduce fuel consumption, and therefore hopefully also reduce the emissions and meet the various environmental targets, etc. But just from a technology point of view, and I know a few of you have fairly strong views on this, that are we as an industry able to meet the targets that are being set, provisional targets 2030, actual firm targets for 2050, with regard to greenhouse gas emissions? What happens in the sort of transition period over the next 10, 15 years when we're still continuing to replace the fleet? And maybe more importantly, what can be done now? What can be done today with today's technologies, etc., to help reduce greenhouse gas emissions? So a fairly broad question. Edwin, do you want to kick us off on that with your views on can we meet them, transition period, what we can do today, really being a summary of the question?
Well, the question, are we going to meet the targets for 2030? Being an engineer myself and having some knowledge about what can be done on board of ships, I would say no. And the reason is because if we want to reach the targets that everybody is looking for in 2040, we should have started building those ships 5 to 10 years ago. So, and even if we have now technology, I mean, even if today there is a technology which is capable of you know, to take over carbon fuels as we're using today, you need 5 years before you start building those ships. So I mean, those ships will only come in the water in short before the deadline of 2030. So I think very much the existing type of ship that we have today, we will also see in 2030. So if everybody start, I think we should continue to do research and development on robust technologies that we can use on board of ships. But I think that is not going to bring us to the target for 2030. It's an utopia. So I think what we should do is that we have to come together with all the stakeholders, and we have to see how we can, from an operational point of view and from an existing optimization point of view of existing robust technologies. Yeah, I give an example. Shipbuilders all over the world, in Japan, in Korea, and China, shipbuilders have been building ships to their convenience. That means a ship should be built efficiently, quick, according to their standard. Instead of building a ship, which is where the hydrodynamics of the hull, the main engine, and the propeller are aligned, are designed in one package. They are all adjusted and aligned with each other. Now, this is not interesting. This is not very much interesting for the shipbuilders, because, you know, we're talking about, for example, asymmetric hulls, which is not easy to build. I mean, it's a complete new concept. But these are the things that we have to start looking at. So we should not continue to build ships convenient for shipyards. One of the things is we should start building ships that actually make sense from a technical point of view. So these are all known technologies. These are all existing and robust things that we have available today. And I think this is where we have to look at, and this is where we have to take advantage of, until we find a robust and reliable solution to stop using carbon fuels. So the answer is no. I don't think we're going to meet the target.
And how far down the road do you, I mean, how long do you think, Erwin, we need before we can start to find those technological solutions to meeting this? Are we 5, 10, 15, 20? What do you, because if it's 20, we're going to be out of time again, aren't we?
Well, at this particular moment, I'm not aware of any robust technology that is available. I mean, we're talking about hydrogen and we're talking about ammonia. Ammonia we know that there are engines that can run on hydrogen and on ammonia, but the amount of hydrogen which is being produced today is very little. It's not enough for what we actually need, or, you know, I mean, for the world fleet. So that's not going to be a solution. And hydrogen and ammonia are being produced using carbon fuels. So, you know, it's I mean, you know, we are putting, you know, the horse behind the wagon, yeah, a little bit, you know. So it's not really making sense. And the idea that we can make hydrogen and ammonia from renewable energy sources like eolic or solar energy, that's not going to work. You know, I mean, I'm not saying that solar energy is not something that we have, you know, that we have to use, or eolic energy is. I'm not against it. I mean, I'm very much in favor of it, but it's not going to resolve the problem that we are facing today in shipping. So if you ask me 10, 15, 20 years, I can give you an answer the moment that somebody comes up with a robust technology which is sound and which we can put on board of ships. Until then, let's try to be smart in design-wise, and let's also try to be smart in how we operate our vessels together with port authorities, together with charterers, together. All parties have to come together. The just-in-time principle is a very good example of how you can save fuel. I mean, how you can reduce your fuel. So everybody has to come together. And this is what I'm saying. Instead of using all those smart people looking in, Star Wars scientific, designs of ships, let's take a small part of those very smart engineers and young and smart engineers and use them to optimize the robust and good technologies that we have available today, and see whether we can improve those. Because I think we all know there is still a lot of room over there. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So 10, 15, 20 years, I can only give the answer the moment you say this is the future. Today, I don't see anything.
Prabhat, maybe can you just talk us through some of the things which you're doing at MSC today to try and, clearly you will be in compliance with regulatory environment, but what you're trying to do to enhance the ESG position, and particularly with reference to the environmental side within MSC, and what actions you're taking.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you all for comments. Again, I will say that we are always optimistic, and I feel that shipping has shown a lot of flexibility. And we have seen in the past, Y2K came, 0.1% sulfur, 0.5% sulfur, ballast water, and every time something new has come, always that half the world fleet will be scrapped and everything. But today the industry has coped up well. It was not a long time ago when we could hear that there is not going to be enough VLSFO fuel available.
Yeah.
But you see that within a short time the situation is completely changed. So I'm very positive, and we are very positive, and it is indeed true that today there is no one solution that can say that this is the way to go. But this is what we are in the transition phase, and today we have to really work with every partnership available to explore all the options. It could be anything that right from, and this is what we are doing actually. So whether one is that you can improve the efficiency, and second thing is you can also reduce the energy demand. And reducing the energy demand is exactly like Erwin said, that it is the shipyards, they have to come with a better design, and of course as the operator that we have to work with them to see that what better design that can be brought, that the ships will consume less. And you're talking about till the time that we have a alternative fuel available, whether it comes from the fossil or non-fossil sources, we need to also consider what are we going to do with existing fleet. If we take the container shipping, we have 50% of the fleet is less than 10 years old. Are we going to replace them in 10 years or 15 years? It's not going to be possible. The whole world trade will come to a stop actually, and neither the yards will have the capacity, or neither there will be enough finance available to replace the fleet. So we have to, while we are definitely doing a partnership and we can lobby with all the industry to focus more on R&D and R&D and R&D, we need to also focus on making existing fleet more efficient. And today I will say that sadly the industry has not utilized all the possible efficiency measure that they can take. Otherwise, if you take a ship which is say even 15-year-old, and there is enough technology available in the market that you can achieve 28 to 30% reduction within 6 months. So this is where is the mindset, this is where the culture, this is where the sustainability approach of the company is coming to the play. And MSC, we have realized it, and from the 2012 we have been heavily investing in the retrofit of the fleet, whether it is a propeller or propeller boss caffeine or the bulbous bow, or you do the cargo boost. So at the end you reduce your CO2 emission per ton of the cargo moved, and this is what we feel that we have been quite successful at. And at the same time the company has been investing a huge amount in replenishing the fleet with the low emission vessels. Even with the conventional fuel burning vessel, we have the 23,000 ships where we have a CO2 emission of less than 7.5 gram per ton of cargo, which is actually, I will not give a figure, but if I say that compared to 10 years ago, it is nearly the half. will not be a overstatement actually. So I believe the key is R&D and R&D with the industry, and also we have to see that maybe something will work on a smaller scale. So we have to try a range of the options. We are not aligned to any one option. We want to see what is going to work. Does it have a business case? Is it going to be widely available? Can we really make it work? Can we scale up for the whole industry? So there are a lot of questions for which we do not have an answer, but I believe that by the good partnership, collaboration, and R&D, shipping can do it. And I'm sure that it is the need of the hour, not only as a shipping company, but as a person, as a society, that we need to achieve this decarbonization at all the cost. And we aspire to be, and we will play our part in this zero emission future.
Cometh the hour, cometh the man. That sounds good. Freddie, sorry, I've rather left you out of this for a little bit, but I know that recently you've been ordering some new buildings, and that you've been looking at that. I mean, in making that decision, how have you looked at these fuel efficiency, environmental issues, technology issues? How have you gone about that evaluation within the investment process that you've been through?
I think, and the first thing to say, as has been said by the other panelists, is these are long life assets, and so in order to replace the global fleet on the water, I think the current estimated value is somewhere around $1 trillion. If you were to replace all of that new, then you're probably somewhere between $2 and $3 trillion. If a new technology came along and you wanted to replace the entire fleet. So it's just not realistic that that happens in a short period of time, and that what is on the water at the moment is out of date and gonna not be used in 10, 15 years time. So as a business, we have always looked at it as fuel efficiency for their age. So we initially focused on Japanese pump room vessels around 10 years old, which relative to their competitors of a similar age are extremely fuel efficient. So they have worked very well, and we can demonstrate the fuel efficiency of those as against other vessels that we've looked at from that vintage. Obviously at a lower value, depreciated value relative to new builds, but essentially we're taking the same view with regard to new builds. So we've ordered some new MRs from Hyundai Mipo, and they will demonstrate fuel savings of somewhere around up to 30% as against certain vessels on the water at the moment. So that ESG aspect of trying to reduce fuel consumption is front of mind, and it does pay off, because you've got, if that fuel saving is a significant saving for charterers, or if you have your vessels in spot, then you get that directly. But on top of that, you've also got to think about, as the others have said, looking after your assets. So propeller cleaning, hull blasting, using data to optimize the way that the vessels are operated, and that is it's becoming more and more important. But it's also it's something that every ship owner should really be looking at, to try and optimize the way that the existing fleet is used. And if you, as a result, get good fuel savings and operating cost savings, if you can replace items as they effectively before they need to, or as they need to be replaced, rather than waiting until they fail, then you're going to save. You're going to save money. It's going to be good for investors, and it's going to be good from an ESG perspective as well.
And then generally, do you see a trend, therefore, Freddie, that in general everything should slow down a bit? Do you think? I mean, is that one of the Is that one of the consequences of this, that we have a generally slowing global fleet speed in order to also assist in reducing on the emissions?
That obviously does reduce emissions. It's quite a hard thing to police, to say that you have to go slower. The industry naturally does that when depending on where rates are. So if rates are if spot rates are very high, then you will naturally the saving from slow steaming is negated, and therefore therefore people tend to go a little bit faster. In a low rate environment, people will tend to go slower. If you start to say that you've got to have regulations for that, then that it becomes slightly trickier. However, I think when people as they are now start to publish the data on CO2 emissions per ton moved, then perhaps the customers are more interested in dictating to the ship owners or operators that they should minimize CO2 emissions, because they're going to be published. But that's a market and a customer driven rather than a regulation driven approach.
Yeah, I agree with that, Freddie, and I was going to come on to that. I mean, maybe it's not, maybe in the current environment where we're, from a ship owner point of view, particularly we're on the private side, but clearly you've also got the issue of public shipping companies having to start publish emissions, and I assume private companies as well to some extent will do so, and so that therefore one not only has, if you like, the pressure coming from the charterers and the end users to actually be looking at the emissions per ton mile of cargo, but it's also going to be something which is much more frequently reported in annual reports, etc. And as we all know, with anything like that, it's very hard to have one year which is worse news than the previous year, and so you almost get a downward ratchet. But Prabhat, how do you see this sort of speed issue? I mean, I wasn't suggesting that there should be mandatory speed regulations, but do you see generally you reacting to speed from an environmental pressure point of view as opposed to purely financial?
The speed is more of a commercial decision, but also, we have also a speed technical decision. The reason is that when I mentioned that we have retrofitted a lot of ships, and so we have optimized them for over a speed of certain range. So if we increase the speed of the ship over that range, then there will be penalty coming in terms of the fuel consumption. So there is actually a sort of then this optimization range become like a guiding trade speed, that in order to benefit from the optimization and keep the emissions low, we need to stay within this optimization range. If for any particular reason, whether reason or safety reason, we need to speed up and we have to pay a penalty, that's a separate matter. But indeed, the emission and this is considered a quite important in assigning a vessel to a certain trade, and also to see that what speed actually they should be doing. And again, I mean, in this case, we have for the whole fleet a real monitoring system which is live, and we can always see that if the ship is performing to the right standard or not right standard, and even going to a simple minute detail like if the ship should be running only one generator, and if they're running a 2 generator, and then the system is providing automatic alert. So it is actually down to the very basic detail of the people who are operating it to have an awareness that you need to reduce energy consumption wherever you can. And same thing applies also for the trade speed.
Erwin, just really trying to sort of sum up that sort of section. If we're looking, at various hurdles with regard to new buildings and actually meeting technological specifications, if we're looking at potentially slower speeds, various other factors we haven't discussed or we haven't had time to discuss yet, in terms of trade wars and other things like that, that there is a general risk aversion, I think, coming, particularly for new money coming into shipping. Surely this is all good news, because all of these things will reduce growth in supply, which then in itself will help us get to a better balance in the medium term of vessel supply versus demand. Is that something you would agree with, or do you think this is all bad news?
Not an easy question, or not an even question, and also not an easy answer. I'm not in favor of a speed limit. That's what I can say. And the reason is because I believe that if you regulate speed for vessels, you are penalizing, for example, a company like MSC, who has done a lot of proactive works and modifications on their ships in order to make them more energy efficient. You are penalizing people who are willing to invest in new buildings, in building more energy efficient ships. So my view on, I mean, if you want to control it, I think you have to use an instrument where you can measure how much CO2 every single ship is producing, and put a limit on that. So that will then also result in a speed reduction, but it will result in a larger speed reduction for all the tonnage, and it will result in maybe a lesser or maybe no speed reduction for new tonnage. Because if you regulate speed throughout the world fleet, why would you build a new ship, an energy efficient ship? You know, I mean, the speed and consumption curve goes exponentially. So, you know, new ships are gaining in that top part, because that's where they are efficient. If you cut that away, their leverage is gone.
Yeah, you lose the efficiency.
But those people, I mean, those new ships are having a much higher financial OPEX than, for example, older tonnage. So, you know, I mean, you create a disadvantage. So I'm afraid if you go for a speed regulation, it's not interesting. I mean, it's not interesting to buy. I mean, to build new ships, to build new efficient ships, and that we don't want. We want people to build new efficient ships.
I agree with you. I agree with you totally, Erwin. I have a feeling, although I can't see it, that I've got Kevin sitting in front of me, waving his virtual stopwatch and making those gestures that he normally makes in the conference of whirling his finger in the air. Am I right, Kevin, that we're 5 minutes left, and I don't know if you have...
I have a couple of questions, but if you have one more question to end your part of it, Andrew, I mean, please go ahead.
Well, I mean, I've got a whole lot more, but I mean, I think there's just one issue that I'd just like to address, and I think this may have been touched on before, but you know, I think we're identifying a whole lot of problems, and I was just trying to think as to, you know, what some of the solutions were. And I mean, clearly, you know, a global approach to these problems rather than regional approaches to these problems must be the way forward. But I was really just wanting to ask the individual panelists on that score as to how do they see getting all parties involved in these issues to get to solutions? How how do we progress that? How do we as an industry try and tackle this collectively rather than trying to regionalize it, or indeed, you know, leave various parties out who are interested? How do we go about that? I appreciate that's a very generalist question, but I think it's just worthy of a little bit of thought as to what we can all do. Freddie, have you got a view on how to collectively manage things?
Very, very briefly, I think the market is generally pretty good at managing things, and the push from investors and their participants as well, so the clients, the pension funds, etc., etc., towards ESG, towards achieving reductions, and initially publishing data, but then imposing or suggesting certain limits or certain activities, actions on top of that is really the most appropriate way that this is going to happen. There are too many parties in the shipping industry to simply impose overall restrictions other than use of very low sulfur fuel or other things like that, which have already been implemented.
Okay, Erwin or Prabhat, do you want to have a view on what we do to collectively solve issues?
No, I believe that first of all, we are very much against any regional approach, because this is going to completely kill, the outcome that a global decision could be expected. Plus, second, it is only going to add a lot of costs, and it is also going to favor some a sector of the players. And I believe that when we are trying to achieve something on a global scale, it has to be applicable to everybody. It has to be applicable to all sides of the tonnage, all deep sea, short sea, everyone. So we are firmly, in a view that it should be only dealt at the IMO level, and then only it can have a global, wider implementation.
Okay. Erwin, do you want to add anything there?
I totally agree with Prabhat. Regional approach is or regional regulations is not the way forward. I think we have to use the IMO. The IMO is there globally for shipping, and I think another thing what's very important is that there are a lot of international shipping bodies, the International Chamber of Shipping, we have Intertanko, Intercargo, PIMCO, and they're all doing a fantastic job. But I think it's about time that policymakers should maybe start talking to ship owners and ask them the question, what do you think we can do, instead of coming up with ideas which are making not any sense. Yeah, so because I mean, if you ask us what can you do, we put our thinking hat on. We know how ships are being operated. We know what is possible on board of those ships, and we can tell you exactly what is possible.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, guys. Kevin, over to you if you've got some questions. Yep. Any of us.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Andrew. We have very little time left, but I think we've time for a couple of questions. I mean, one is the issue we discussed right at the beginning. Are we better prepared for crew changes if we have another severe wave of COVID-19 sometime in the next few months? Prabhat?
Yes, I believe that we have learned very valuable lessons, and we know what is going to work. And I can say the answer in short is yes, we are well better prepared.
Okay, very good. Another question, and perhaps all of you, including Andrew, if you want. I mean, this we can finish with this one, and it's just a very like 1 minute each. Can COVID-19 and all of its disruptions be a catalyst for a better industry? And if so, what is the most basic lesson to be learned? Freddie.
A catalyst for a better industry. Okay, so I think, I mean, it puts it under the spotlight, and it has potentially over the next few months reduced the returns available to investing in shipping. Question longer term with the silver lining and less new building activity. but yes, it can, in that it has put more spotlight on ESG, and so it is encouraging people to think more about that, to release their data, to think about new building and whether that is possible. Although the finance generally has not been available for new building, so activity has been low. So yes, but I think the catalyst was there already. It is a catalyst, but the fundamentals were there already.
Okay, Erwin, do you have a view?
Yeah, I think we have learned a lot. One of the things that I am very happy about is that we finally start making use of all the available communication tools that we have available, which were available already, but we were forced to start using them, and now everybody got used to them. So I see that within the organization we're communicating very well, but also with our vessels. You know, we have set up, or we did set up, weekly communication with top management, and even with our principals. So yes, we have learned a lot, especially with regards to communication. And from a personal point of view, I've learned now that I don't have to go to Japan or China or to Korea or the United States for a half-day meeting and lose my whole week. So that is a tremendous advantage. Yeah?
We do hope, however, that you will attend physical conferences in the future. Prabhat?
Thank you. Yes, indeed. I believe, like everybody else shared, so COVID-19 has taught us very, very important lessons. And you know, one is also, you know, we are being an operation and talking of the crew, and I think everybody in the office has realized what empathy means. And I think that, and this is something that can deliver you in a big way. And talking of the business side, we also see that COVID-19 has also given a bigger opportunity, especially if we talk about for the you know, short sea shipping, that there is a big opportunity to move a lot of cargo from the road or air to the ships, and because we can't deny that shipping is the most environment friendly mass transportation industry, and moving a lot of cargo from the road and air is going to bring a lot of benefit, going to create extra business, and it has been very successful in containing the pandemic in a big way. So that's where is opportunity also, and there'll be more such opportunity sure in other sectors.
Thank you, Prabhat. And Andrew, last word from you, perhaps.
Yeah, so I mean, I agree with what all of the guys have said, but putting my optimistic macro hat on, I think that what I've seen from it is that I think for a long time, particularly in the equity markets and in the investment markets, shipping's been a little bit of a, so I say, dark horse at very least. Seemed to be very, very volatile and very risky and stuff. I think that investors are looking back now and are looking at the maritime industry versus other traditional asset classes, particularly property, aircraft, and many other areas, which have shown far greater vulnerability to the pandemic. And in fact, shipping has actually, because of the underlying world trade, which, as we've all said, has to go on, that because of that dependence has actually proven to be far more robust than many of these other alternative investment areas. And I think that is a massive plus for our industry if we can handle that properly and continue to attract further investment into the maritime industry. So I think that's a big positive for us.
That's great. A great point to end on. So that's the end of the session. Andrew, Freddie, Erwin, and Prabhat, thank you very much indeed. It's also the end of our Marine Money Cyprus 2020 virtual forum. I thank once again all of our sponsors and our speakers. We sincerely hope that we'll be back in Limassol next year to see each other face to face. But for now, from Marine Money, thank you very much and goodbye.
Kevin, do we now get the drink from Marshall Islands?
Virtually, yes.
A virtual drink from Marshall Islands. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.